I-27F stared at my phone in disbelief. My mother had just called, inviting me to dinner at my parents' house. It had been months since we'd last spoken and years since I'd visited them. I'm Madeline, and I guess you could say I'm the black sheep of my family, or at least that's what they think. Growing up, I was always second best. My younger sister Victoria, 24F, was the golden child who could do no wrong. She was prettier, more charming, and had this way of making everyone love her, especially our parents. It wasn't that they were cruel to me, they just clearly preferred her. The dance recital they'd miss because they were too busy? They'd somehow find time when it was Victoria's turn. The average grades that earned me lectures somehow became doing her best when they came from my sister. I sighed, putting my phone down on my kitchen counter. The marble felt cool under my fingertips, a small luxury in the apartment I never told them about. Why had Mom called now? What did they want? Fine, I muttered to myself. I'll go. A week later, I pulled up to my parents' modest suburban home. I deliberately dressed down, jeans, a simple blouse, and minimal jewelry. Nothing that would indicate I was anything but the struggling middle manager they thought I was. Taking a deep breath, I rang the doorbell. Dad opened the door. Maddie, come in, come in. His welcome seemed genuine but distracted. As soon as I stepped into the living room, I saw why. Victoria was holding court on the couch, Mom and Dad's attention fully focused on her as she gestured wildly, telling some story about her workplace drama. She paused mid-sentence when she saw me, her perfect smile never faltering. Oh, the prodigal daughter returns, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Mom jumped up. Maddie, honey, we're so glad you could make it. She hugged me briefly, then immediately returned to her spot beside Victoria. I settled into an armchair across from them, watching as Victoria's eyes scanned my outfit with barely concealed contempt. Love the thrift store chic look, she said, smirking. Thanks, I replied simply. Not all of us need designer labels to feel good about ourselves. Dad cleared his throat. So, Maddie, your mother's made a lovely dinner. Should be ready in about 20 minutes. We made awkward small talk until Mom announced dinner was ready. As we gathered around the dining table, the same one from my childhood, Dad poured wine for everyone. Victoria immediately launched into stories about her job at a marketing firm. They practically begged me to take on the Peterson project, she was saying. Said I was the only one who could handle it. That's wonderful, sweetie. Mom beamed, reaching over to pat her hand. Dad turned to me suddenly. And what about you, Maddie? Still at that same company? What was it, assistant manager? I took a sip of wine before answering. Still at Christopher and Morgan Financial, yes. Victoria snorted. God, Maddie, you've been there what, 7 years now? Most people would have moved up by your age. I mean, I've been promoted twice in 3 years. I could feel my jaw clenching. If they only knew that I'd been CMF's financial director for the past 2 years. That my annual bonus alone was more than Victoria's yearly salary. That I'd been featured in Fortune's Rising Stars under 35 last year. But they didn't know because they'd never asked. Never cared enough to keep up with my life. Instead of correcting her, I simply smiled. Not everyone has your drive, Vicky. Or her talent, Mom added, serving Victoria another helping of mashed potatoes. The conversation continued in this vein throughout dinner. Victoria bragged about her impressive salary, her jealous coworkers, and her upcoming Hawaiian vacation. My parents ate it up, asking follow-up questions and showering her with praise. Not once did they ask anything meaningful about my life. I've been saving for Hawaii for months, Victoria was saying. But when you make good money, it's not that hard. She shot me a smug look. That sounds wonderful, I said, pushing my plate away. But I should probably get going. Early meeting tomorrow, thanks for dinner, Mom. I stood, gathering my purse. Mom walked me to the door while Victoria and Dad remained at the table. It was good to see you, honey, she said, patting my shoulder. As I drove back to my downtown apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that there had been some ulterior motive for my invitation. Whatever it was, I was glad to be heading home. Back in my spacious apartment, I kicked off my heels and poured myself a proper glass of wine, not the cheap stuff my parents served. Just as I was settling onto my balcony with a view of the city skyline, my phone pinged. A message from Victoria. Hope you're not too down about your sad little life, sis. Not everyone can be successful, I guess. Don't worry though, I'll send you a postcard from Hawaii. I stared at the message for a long moment, then burst out laughing. If she only knew. I closed the message without responding and took another sip of my wine, looking out at the twinkling city lights from my 30th floor luxury apartment in Lakeview Tower. I didn't always have such a strange relationship with my family. When I was very young, before Victoria was born, things were different. I have faint memories of my dad tossing me in the air, my mom reading bedtime stories. But everything changed when Victoria arrived. When I was 4, she was the perfect baby, rarely cried, always smiling, with these big blue eyes that seemed to enchant everyone who looked at her. By the time I was 10, the pattern was clear, Victoria was special, and I was just there. I tried everything to win their approval. I joined every club, studied until midnight, volunteered on weekends. In high school, I was valedictorian, debate team captain, and student council president. But when I gave my graduation speech, scanning the audience for my parents' proud faces, their seats were empty. They had taken Victoria to her dance competition instead. That day, something broke inside me. I realized nothing I did would ever be enough, so I stopped trying to impress them and started living for myself. I got a full scholarship to Yale, graduated with honors, and landed a job at CMF. Within 4 years, I was managing my own team. 2 years ago, I was promoted to financial director. And I never told them any of it. I was jarred from these memories by my phone ringing. It was Mom again. I hesitated before answering. Hello? We're having a family gathering next Saturday. Everyone will be there, Aunt Carol, Uncle Jim, your cousins. We'd like you to come. I frowned. What's the occasion? Oh, just a family meeting. There's something special to announce. Her voice was deliberately vague. I should have said no. Every instinct told me to stay away, but curiosity got the better of me. Fine. What time? 5 o'clock, and Maddie, try to dress appropriately. I hung up, seething. Appropriately? As if I normally showed up in rags. Saturday arrived, and I stood in my walk-in closet, deliberating. I finally chose a simple black dress, Dior, though you'd only know if you recognized the subtle stitching and fabric quality. To the untrained eye, it looked modest, but it cost more than Victoria's monthly salary. When I arrived at my parents' house, cars lined the driveway. I recognized Aunt Carol's sedan and Uncle Jim's truck. Taking a deep breath, I headed inside. Maddie. Aunt Carol exclaimed, pulling me into a hug. It's been years. Look at you, all grown up and so sensible looking. I forced a smile. Good to see you too, Aunt Carol. For the next 15 minutes, I made small talk with relatives I barely remembered, all while watching my parents and Victoria huddled in a corner, whispering and occasionally glancing my way. Whatever this announcement was, they were clearly excited about it. Mom finally called everyone to the dining table, which had been extended to accommodate the 15 or so family members present. Once we were all seated with plates of food, she stood and tapped her glass with a spoon. We've gathered you all here today for a special reason, she began, beaming. Victoria has some wonderful news to share. Victoria stood, clearing her throat dramatically. 2 weeks ago, she announced, her voice dripping with satisfaction, I bought my own apartment in Westbrook Heights. The room erupted in applause. Westbrook Heights was indeed one of the nicer areas in town, though far from the most prestigious. It's a gorgeous 2-bedroom, Victoria continued. Mom and Dad helped with the down payment, of course. She blew them a kiss, which they received with beaming smiles. When's the housewarming party? Cousin Brian called out. Victoria simpered. Oh, I haven't decided yet. Still getting everything perfect. I smiled to myself, taking a sip of water. Good for her. It was a nice accomplishment, even if she needed our parents' help. Mom suddenly turned to me, her voice unusually loud. Maddie, you haven't congratulated your sister. All eyes turned to me. Victoria giggled. She's probably just jealous. Not everyone can afford property in this market. My parents exchanged knowing smiles. Then Mom, making sure everyone could hear, said, well, it'll be a long time before Maddie can match this achievement. Property ownership is for those with real careers. The table fell silent, everyone watching for my reaction. They expected embarrassment, perhaps tears or stammering excuses. Instead, I laughed. A genuine, spontaneous laugh. Actually, I said, I bought my place 3 years ago. Victoria's smile faltered. A condo, you mean? Or a townhouse? I took another bite of food, chewing slowly, making them wait. No, it's an apartment. 4 bedrooms, corner unit with a wraparound terrace in Lakeview Tower. Gasps around the table. Lakeview Tower was the most exclusive address in the city. That's impossible, Victoria sputtered. You're a middle manager. You couldn't afford a broom closet in Lakeview. I dabbed my lips with a napkin. I've been financial director at CMF for 2 years now. My salary and bonuses are comfortable. The shock on their faces was priceless. Dad's fork clattered onto his plate. Financial director, he repeated. Why didn't you tell us? I met his gaze evenly. None of you ever asked. A heavy silence fell over the table. Then Mom's expression suddenly softened. Darling, that's wonderful news. When are you having your housewarming? We'd love to see this apartment. I had my housewarming 3 years ago, I replied calmly. With friends. Mom's smile stiffened. Victoria's face had turned an interesting shade of red. The rest of my relatives were looking at me with newfound interest, as if seeing me for the first time. Uncle Jim raised his glass. Well, congratulations, Maddie. That's quite an achievement. Others murmured agreement while my parents and Victoria sat in stunned silence. As dinner continued, I noticed how everyone suddenly wanted to talk to me, ask about my job, my life. People who had barely acknowledged me for years were now hanging on my every word. I didn't stay long after my revelation. The atmosphere had become unbearable, my relatives suddenly fawning over me, Victoria sulking in the corner, and my parents switching between shock and an unsettling eagerness to reconnect. I made my excuses after dessert, citing an early morning meeting. But it's Sunday tomorrow. Mom protested, following me to the door. Global markets don't sleep, I replied, which wasn't entirely untrue. I did have a call with our Tokyo office, but not until the afternoon. The drive home was strangely liberating. For years, I'd hidden my success from them, partly out of spite, partly because their opinion had stopped matching long ago. Now that the truth was out, I felt oddly light, but also weary. My apartment welcomed me with its familiar comfort. I kicked off my heels and collapsed onto my living room sofa, staring at the city lights through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The revelation at dinner replayed in my mind, and suddenly everything clicked. The random dinner invitation last week, today's family gathering, it all made sense now. They'd wanted to showcase Victoria's achievement and, by contrast, highlight my supposed failures. They'd gathered the entire family to witness my humiliation. Instead, they'd ended up looking foolish, and now they were scrambling to adjust to this new reality where I wasn't the family disappointment. I was still processing this when my phone began buzzing incessantly. First my father, then my mother, then Victoria. I silenced it and turned on a movie instead. Whatever they wanted to say could wait until morning. Update 1, the morning after the family dinner, I woke up to 17 missed calls and numerous text messages. Most were variations of, "Oh, call us immediately," and, "We need to talk." I ignored them all and went about my Sunday routine, yoga, brunch with friends, and preparation for the upcoming work week. By evening, a lengthy text from Mom appeared. "Maddie, we need to speak with you. Your father and I have given this a lot of thought. We've always supported Victoria financially because we thought you were struggling too much to ask for help. Now that we know you're doing so well, we believe as family we should all support each other. Victoria's having trouble with her mortgage payments, and as her successful sister, surely you could help. Call us back immediately. I stared at the message in disbelief, then started laughing. The audacity was breathtaking. After years of neglect and favoritism, after attempting to humiliate me in front of the entire family, they now expected me to bail out their golden child. I typed back, "I'm not interested in discussing this. You wanted to embarrass me yesterday, and now you're asking for my help? Please don't contact me again about this matter." Their response was immediate, "You're being selfish, Maddie. This is what family does. If you refuse, you're choosing to exclude yourself from this family. Think carefully about this." I didn't bother responding. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine and tried to focus on the week ahead. The next morning at work, I immersed myself in quarterly reports and budget meetings. By midweek, I'd almost forgotten about the whole ordeal. Then my assistant buzzed my office. "Miss Blackwood, there are 2 people in reception insisting on seeing you. They say they're your parents." I froze. "Tell them I'm in a meeting. They said they'll wait as long as necessary." I sighed. "Give me 5 minutes, then send them in." When my parents walked in, their expressions were a mix of awe and determination as they took in my corner office with its sweeping views. "Nice place," Dad said, his eyes lingering on the awards and certificates displayed on my credenza, including my feature in Fortune's Rising Stars Under 35. "Thank you. What can I do for you?" I kept my tone professional. Mom stepped forward. "Maddie, we need to discuss Victoria's situation. She's struggling with her mortgage payments, and with your financial success." "No," I interrupted firmly. "I'm not paying Victoria's mortgage." Dad's face reddened. "Now listen here, young lady. Family helps family. Your mother and I have always." "Always what?" I asked quietly. "Always been there for me? Always supported me equally? 3 years ago, when I bought my apartment in Lakeview Tower, I invited you to the housewarming party. You couldn't come because Victoria had a dance recital. She was 21 years old, and you still prioritized her hobby over a major milestone in my life." "That's different," Mom said. "Victoria needed more attention. She was more sensitive, and now she needs more money, and suddenly I'm family again?" I shook my head. "I suggest you focus on helping Victoria learn to stand on her own 2 feet instead of enabling her dependency." I stood, signaling the end of our meeting. "I have work to do." Mom's expression hardened. "If you turn your back on us now, you'll regret it. Family is all you have in the end." "I have friends who've been more family to me than you ever were," I replied calmly. As they left, Dad turned back. "You're making a terrible mistake, Maddie. This isn't over." I threw myself into work over the next few weeks. Then my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Maddie, it's Aunt Carol." "Hey Aunt Carol, what's up?" "I thought you should know what's happening," she said, her voice lowered. "Your parents are telling everyone that you're a terrible person. They're saying you refuse to help your sister even though you're swimming in money, and now they're struggling to make her mortgage payments." I laughed dryly. "Let me guess, Mom's taken extra shifts, and Dad's working weekends?" "Exactly." "How did you know?" "Because that's the narrative they want, poor, hard-working parents sacrificing everything for their struggling daughter while the selfish wealthy one refuses to help." Aunt Carol hesitated. "Can I ask why you won't help?" "For years, they've treated me like I was invisible unless they needed something to compare Victoria to. They missed every important moment in my life, from high school graduation to my promotions at work. They didn't even know I'd been made financial director until I told them at that dinner." The line was quiet for a moment. "I didn't realize," Aunt Carol finally said. "I knew Victoria got more attention, but I didn't know it was that bad." After hanging up, I looked out at the city skyline from my office. Was I being cold-hearted? Maybe. But years of emotional neglect had taught me to protect myself. My parents had made their choice long ago, repeatedly choosing Victoria over me. Now they could live with the consequences. I had a feeling this wasn't over yet, but for the first time in my life, I felt completely in control of my own story. Update 2. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, my family proved me wrong. Their harassment has reached new heights of desperation and manipulation. Victoria started posting daily rants on social media about selfish siblings who abandon family and successful people who forget their roots. She didn't tag me directly, but made sure to share these posts with all our mutual connections, including some of my professional contacts. Then she took it a step further. She started showing up at coffee shops near my office, deliberately making scenes that my coworkers could witness. Please, sis, mom and dad are struggling because of me. They're taking out loans to help with my mortgage. The final straw came when my parents launched their own campaign. They somehow got hold of my client meeting schedule, I suspect through a distant cousin who works in a partner firm, and started appearing at restaurants where I was having business lunches. During one particularly important meeting with potential investors, mom burst into tears at the next table, loudly sobbing about her heartless daughter, who left her family in financial ruin. I had to cut the meeting short and reschedule. My parents didn't stop there. They began sending letters to my neighbors in Lakeview Tower, painting themselves as struggling parents who sacrificed everything for their daughter's education. They conveniently omitted that they had drained my college fund to pay for Victoria's dance lessons. The manipulation reached its peak last week. Dad had the audacity to show up at my office with a priest from their church, attempting an impromptu family counseling session. I had security escort them out. That evening, Victoria sent me a message that made my blood boil. Hope you're happy, sis. Mom's in the hospital from stress. Her blood pressure spiked after you had dad thrown out of your office like a criminal. But I guess your precious career matters more than family. I later learned from Aunt Carol that mom was perfectly fine, she had a routine checkup that day. They were just using it to guilt-trip me. The most infuriating part? They've started a GoFundMe campaign titled, Help Parents Save Daughter's Home. The description is full of half-truths about how they're on the verge of losing their retirement savings because they had to help their younger daughter when their wealthy older daughter refused. Some relatives have been sharing the campaign on their social media, adding their own embellishments to the story. Cousin Brian, who praised my success at the family dinner, now posts about how money changes people, and family should come first. I've had enough. I contacted my lawyer, who sent cease and desist letters to both my parents and Victoria. The letters outlined their harassment and warned of potential legal consequences if they continue showing up at my workplace or spreading defamatory statements. Their response? Victoria posted a screenshot of the letter with the caption, "Look how far she's fallen, sending lawyers after her own family." Guess this is what success does to people. My HR department has been incredibly supportive throughout this ordeal. They've updated security protocols and made sure all front desk staff have photos of my parents and Victoria. Still, the constant stress of wondering where they'll show up next is exhausting. Yesterday, I received an email from Victoria's mortgage lender, which she had apparently forwarded to me. She's 3 months behind on payments, and the bank is threatening foreclosure. Mom followed up with a voicemail, "Your sister is about to lose her home, and it will be your fault. We raised you better than this." No, Mom. You raised me to be exactly this way, self-sufficient and unwilling to enable toxic behavior. You taught me these lessons through years of neglect and favoritism. I'm just finally putting them into practice. I've blocked their numbers and emails. My building's security has their photos. My social media accounts are locked down. Let them rage into the void, I'm done. Update 3, everything came crashing down for my family this week, and I have to admit, there's a certain poetic justice to it all. Victoria finally got served with an eviction notice. Turns out, she hadn't just missed 3 months of mortgage payments, she had been lying about her income on the loan application. Mom and Dad had co-signed, thinking their golden child could do no wrong. Now they're all facing the consequences of their financial fraud. The bank launched an investigation after discovering discrepancies in Victoria's loan documents. She had claimed to be a senior marketing director, making 6 figures, when she was actually just a junior account manager. Mom and Dad's co-signing made them liable for her fraud. Their GoFundMe campaign backfired spectacularly when someone, not me, posted proof of Victoria's actual position and salary in the comments. The platform shut down their campaign for misrepresentation, and they had to refund all donations. Dad had to liquidate his retirement account to cover the legal fees. Mom's reputation at her workplace is in shambles after her colleagues discovered her dramatic performances at my business meetings were all staged. The relatives who supported their smear campaign are now frantically backpedaling. Cousin Brian deleted all his money changes people he posts after his employer, who happens to be one of CMF's business partners, saw them. Aunt Carol called yesterday with an update. Victoria moved back in with our parents after being evicted. Their credit is ruined, and they're facing potential legal consequences for the mortgage fraud. All those years of enabling Victoria finally caught up with them. As for me, I just booked a 3-week vacation through Europe. Paris, Rome, Barcelona, all the places I've always wanted to visit. First-class flights, luxury hotels, the works. Not out of spite, but because I've earned it. Before my flight today, I received one final email from Dad. Your mother and I are disappointed in your childish behavior. Blocking our numbers, refusing to discuss family matters. This isn't how we raised you. Victoria is struggling, and as her sister, you have a responsibility to help. We've had to dip into our retirement savings to cover her mortgage fraud case. Is this really the daughter we raised? A selfish woman who puts luxury vacations above family needs? Think about your actions while you're gallivanting around Europe. I deleted the email and put my phone in airplane mode. As the plane took off, I watched the city grow smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely. Below me was the past, the manipulation, the guilt trips, the toxic family dynamics. Above were clear skies and my future. Looking back now, I realize something important. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting free. My parents and Victoria created their own downfall through years of entitlement and poor choices. I just refuse to be their safety net. To everyone who's been following my story, thank you for your support. I'm writing this from a cafe in Paris, sipping excellent wine and feeling truly free for the first time in my life. Sometimes happy endings aren't about reconciliation, they're about having the courage to write your own story.